Hi everyone, so I'm Gina Barker and I'm a textile designer. I'm here to talk about my practice as a designer and what I've done with 3D printing. So my background is quite multidisciplinary. So I studied textiles in practice at Manchester School of Art in 2015 to 2018. And then I was fortunate enough to go on and do a MSc in Industrial Digitalisation. I did this course at Manchester Metropolitan University, and I received a scholarship from Autodesk for a Women in Leadership programme, which allowed me to really innovate my practice as a designer and sort of grow my digital skills and push the boundaries of what was possible in that realm. And then now, currently, I am a research-based designer, still continuing my research from my master's thesis, and also work as an associate lecturer on the Textiles in Practice course. So the content of my presentation today will include my research into 3D printed textiles, the ideas that I had behind what was possible with 3D printing, and then my experimenting with FDM technology. So the research, this is just like a little snippet from my thesis, and what really was traditionally focusing on textiles and sort of pushing the boundaries of what was possible within that industry. So I started focusing on 3D printing onto fabric, and I wasn't the first person to approach that subject, but the research that I had looked at before was quite similar in the sense that it didn't really look at colour or think about the overall aesthetic of the design. And that was something that I knew from my textile background I could really push. And then I started to really develop this idea of combining mainly recycled PLA with netted fabrics. So a little bit about the inspiration behind my work. I was really drawn to Envision's Design Lab, which is a collective based in Eindhoven. And basically the fact that the process is the most important aspect of the design work. I didn't want to focus on an end product because I knew that it wasn't really what I was interested in achieving. It was more about the tactility of the products I produced. And I really became interested in Envisions during my degree in textiles. I took a trip to Dutch Design Week where I saw their work, and it really captured the overall feel for what my work was really about as well. So then, based on my research into 3D printing on my degree course and then onto my master's, I formed a project called Layered. It's basically about layering up fabric with 3D printing, but in a more trend-driven and design aesthetic format. So these are a few experiments which I produced for my research, and it was all about how many layers of fabric can sort of sandwich in the layers, and how that would restrict the movement of the materials. And I found that a lot of the experiments I produced were quite interesting, and you definitely have to touch them to know what the research is really focusing on. They're very tactile pieces here, and then focusing on trapping colour within them, so changing the filaments and that. And then focusing on the materials that I used for the project. So depending on the material that I trapped into the fabrics, it kind of gave that shape of the overall outcome. And the one on the left-hand side, I trapped a steel-based fabric in there, and it really held its shape when you fold it into place. It sort of stuck in that space. So those ones are more experimental pieces, and I used wood filament on cork fabric as well. So just combining different materials that really fused well together. And I found that the fabrics that are more net structured have got that hole in the fabrics worked better because it fused the materials together and allowed for a more durable outcome. So again, focusing on shape and colour, because my practice isn't just around 3D printing. I do graphic design, I paint, and I found that 3D printing really allowed me to create those clean pieces that sit alongside each other really nice and work really well as objects in themselves. So like mini sculptural pieces. So it could lend itself to larger scale pieces for art exhibitions and that kind of thing. So approaching on the sustainability side of the project, I did work with filamentous filaments who use recycled plastics within their products. This is something that I think needs more research into for the project, focusing on like recycled materials that then get fused into the fabrics, but definitely using more recycled plastics as a start at pushing on the sustainability side within the project. And I found as well, because I was making pieces that were quite overall in their own, as like a good quality piece, using these materials weren't necessarily for throwaway use. So it was a bigger focus on that. And then again, just to touch on the materials that I did use, RPLA being the main one, and then focusing on colour and wood filaments as well. I found that a lot of the 3D printed textiles mainly used white filament and things, so I wanted to expand my colour material knowledge and really push that within the outcomes. And then this is just like an overall image really of all the different samples that I produced for the project layered. Again, keeping my design aesthetic and creating quite tangible and tactile pieces, which are really nice to handle, whilst also looking really interesting in their own right, and then possibly going on to become something else with a different outcome, working with another person that could maybe see it for something else. And then the future of my project, because the process is the main thing for me, it's quite of a question mark really for this project. But those are just areas that I could see itself lending to quite well, especially for like sensory, because they are so nice to handle, like calming objects and things, and interiors for like larger spaces. So they're just like key in like areas that I thought like it would lend itself to quite well. And then I think I've done it quite quickly, but that's my presentation into my work so far.